Hello, everyone. Welcome to the We Have Issues Why podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Carvell.
I'm Matt.
Today we are going to be changing it up a little bit, and we are going to discuss a party plank of the American Solidarity Party, kind of a get to know your party better episode. The plank of the party platform that we are going to talk about is life and the issues that revolve around that. And we are going to start off with capital punishment. That is a big issue. Even within the party, there has been some disagreements in the past. The official party stance is that because we respect all life, that it is impossible to reverse a decision of death penalty. You cannot bring them back. We're a first world country. We have the means to keep the rest of society safe from those who would do harm. There is no real need to end someone's life, and it should just be abolished.
You know, the way I stand with this right now is that I think it's really important that we understand how this is affecting our culture. What is the importance of life to the general population? And obviously, in our party, we deem life as being extremely important. However, there are people that will argue that sometimes justice needs to prevail. Sometimes we need to implement justice. And how we perceive justice is exactly what we're arguing about in society. Some people might think justice might be the death penalty. Some people might think justice might be just put someone behind bars, keep them away from the general population. And that's where we have this discrepancy. I think our party in general, we look at the viewpoint of when a life is taken from some other individual, what we don't want to do is we don't want to continue the cycle and just start taking life away. That's the general idea of the party and kind of how I see the party reach. However, there are some fractions, some people inside of our party that say, you know what, the death penalty is necessary. And it's necessary for a couple reasons. Because if you have someone that is themselves taking away life from others, then they are a threat to society and how we should view the importance of life. Meaning that if I'm someone that's taking life, I need to be eliminated so that life won't be taken away again, either by me or someone that is similar to me. Whether we go about executing individuals that are a threat to other lives, that's something that we need more talk about. And it kind of reminds me of kind of what's going on right now, especially what's going on this year with Ron DeSantis. Florida and Ron DeSantis has executed or given execution order this year more than any other year in the state's history. And this is something that, you know, as we know, the conservatives have a little bit more stronger of a foothold in Florida. And this might be an ideology where the death penalty is a type of justice. And we're seeing more and more of it in certain states. And there is a record number of executive orders to issue execution in the state of Florida.
I think it's just the growing anti-life policies of the Republican Party, where they're not seeking justice with these things. They're seeking vengeance. They're seeking superiority. They are seeking, ways to confirm that they are the more moral people, because that is what their theology teaches them. That is what their political philosophy teaches them. And it's frankly quite disgusting to me. I don't see how the Republican Party has a lot of Christians within it, and a lot of people that, say they espouse Christian values. And this is one of those issues where I see where they are not following Christian values. Our Savior got the death penalty, and whatever the theological ramifications of that are, is that a good thing? Do we want to be repeating this on criminals?
Right, exactly.
Like, it's not a sacrifice on their part. We are forcing them through this. It was wrong to forcibly kill Jesus, so that's my opinion.
You know, you got a really good point, right? In my opinion, you got a really good point, is that we shouldn't be looking towards trying to get our revenge, because that's kind of what it's looking like sometimes, is that we've become very vengeful. But how much of that is media?
And if it's
right?
if it's not vengeance, it's dehumanization. It's taking the dignity against somebody. Like, I think Louisiana maybe and Florida, they want to execute pedophiles. No one's going to defend a pedophile, right?
Right.
No one is. But they're still human beings. They still have human dignity. And just because you commit crimes or just because you have a sickness, you don't deserve to die.
Right.
I think that's where the philosophy of this platform is.
My heart has kind of hardened toward the death penalty over the years. When you think about it, my pastor put it this way. He said, you don't know how much God is still working on that person. And so, if you sentence them to death, you don't know how you're going to kind of interrupt God's plan for that person, which you can get into the whole thing about, are you really in control of God's plan on that? But so how I see the death penalty is only in extreme certain circumstances would it be really necessary. So I'm not 100% opposed to it. I think it's used way too much and way too liberally. I would like to see that cut out. Really, the only circumstances I would say that I would agree that it's necessary would be like premeditated first-degree murder. Somebody's plotted something out. Certain instances of pedophilia, in certain rape cases, particularly egregious ones. And if you have somebody who is a particularly repeat violent offender, those are the three circumstances I would say that I deem it okay to be used. There's biblical precedent for the death penalty. I mean, in the Old Testament, there was a taking of life was granted to humans to be able to execute kind of on God's behalf in judgment. So there's a biblical precedent for it. And it's kind of funny that Catholics are, anti-death penalty, 100% against it, because the Catholics did have the Crusades. It's not like, the Christians now are like, well, this is a new day. Well, it's been done in the past. There's biblical precedent for it. And Carvell's got a good point. It's not meant to be for vengeance or revenge. If you look at criminal justice statistics, these heavier penalties do in some circumstances deter crime. And one of those was states that were very liberal about the death penalty did see drops in certain violent crimes. Not saying that it should be used liberally, but I'm saying it being on the table, it does seem to deter extreme crimes. So all that being said, I would like to see it, restrictions placed on it, used only in the most dire of circumstances. When I did my degree, part of our senior capstone is we had to take the criminal justice system and basically dismantle it completely and rebuild it the way we wanted to. And even then, my death penalty thing, they couldn't sit on death row for more than 5 years. You sat on death row for 5 years once you've been sentenced. They bring them back. They have another trial in case there's been, an advancement of technology, if there's been any new evidence that has been brought forward in the case. And if the sentencing still stands after that second trial, then, you're not sitting there wasting away, and then you get to be 70 years old and they decide it's time to take you out. So
I have a really complex view, just my viewpoint in general about the death penalty. I am for the death penalty and at the same time against it. I think that there are individuals inside this, in the U.S. or inside this world, that are inherently evil. all they think about is doing evil. All they think about is killing. I remember I just watched a video not too long ago about a guy who he killed his girlfriend or whoever with that. And there was like some Asian gentleman off in the background. I think he owned the motel, and he heard some noise. He was just looking out. He didn't know what was going on. So the guy casually walked by him and then boom, shot him and killed him. Mm-hmm. And he had no remorse for life, no inclination of feeling sorry for what he done, right? And there's a certain type of justice that needs to be had, you know, and there's also an understanding that needs to be told to, and I hate to say it like this, society, that actions like these, we are not going to tolerate. Mm-hmm. Especially sometimes you'll see like there's mass shooters and stuff as well that will try to kill as many people as they can, and then we like kind of say, oh, okay, this guy is crazy, let's just, you know, he's insane, let's just put him inside of one of those same places and then give him the opportunity to change. But you know, that hurts the family. And you know, everybody should be learning forgiveness. This is something that's taught, but there are some people that are inherently just evil and they want to do evil, and they showed absolutely no remorse. That's where I am for the death penalty. But where I'm against it is the abuse of it. Mm-hmm. Because we know from history that there were people on death row that they later found out through forensics or whatever it may be that they were actually innocent.
Disproportionately affects the poor and minorities.
Exactly.
Yep.
You know, I just recently read that story about that black 14-year-old, I think he was, the youngest boy to ever get executed. Come on now, like really? I mean, I know that was a time during Jim Crow laws and segregations and stuff, but that's tells you about the human characteristics and how evil a system and a society can be. And this is where I'm against it, right? I believe people can change. I believe that people are not always guilty. Sometimes we have no way of knowing unless we have real video feed, real evidence, real whatever. And I'd rather, if there's 100 people who could do wrong and there's only one of the 100 people that is innocent, I'd rather nobody die. I'd rather everybody just to live, because that one innocent person does not deserve death, right?
You bring up a good point with it being abused, and with the 14-year-old, obviously that happened, and it happens a lot. But something I would like to point out is there's a part of me that suspects, you know, death penalty could be a way of our criminal justice system kind of cleaning up after itself. Because if that 14-year-old had gone into the system and he had been there for any length of time, his recidivity rate is going to be high. And that's part of the issue with our justice system. You can have somebody go in for one of these more minor crimes, not saying that his was a minor crime, but you have people go in for these minor crimes, and that's where they become, you hear this all the time, they become a career criminal while they're in there. And so that's something that I would like to stress. If we're going to keep the death penalty on the table, the criminal justice system really needs to get a handle on being able to reform and get people integrated back into society, because as it stands, a lot of these people go in, they basically learn a culture of criminology while they're in being incarcerated. Then they come out and they have no prospects, they have no funds, they have no job, they have no place to stay. Of course they're going to be repeat offenders. And so if we are going to be a country that has the death penalty, we do need to do something better about getting people back into society. But like you said, Carvell, there's some people who are just inherently evil, and those are the people who the death penalty needs to be reserved for.
How many people do you guys think they executed in the U.S. in 2023? And then let me ask you this follow-up question. How many people do they execute in other countries, like let's say China? And do you think we're doing it right or wrong?
China does execute a lot of people, but and a lot of states have stopped executing people. But Texas executes a lot of people.
So I'm asking it in particular 2023.
I want to say in 2023. I want to say the U.S. executed 450 people and China executed 1,200 officially.
Okay. Okay. I like your guess, Chris, but go ahead, Matt.
Okay.
Is it sub 10,000?
Oh God.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It is. Okay. All right. My guess would be 1,200
In the U.S.?
in the U.S. and in China. See, this is a trick question because
It's the
China.
official numbers. It's the official numbs.
The official numbers, I would say it's 0. Now, how many people China's actually executed is probably a lot.
So you guys are going to be surprised by this number, and you can look it up because I'm grabbing this straight from Google. Right? It says in 2023 only 24 executions.
Oh, that's better. That's
in the country.
I knew.
Were performed. And so that gives you an idea that a lot of people are not wanting to execute, but we know that there's over 19,000 murders, and stuff, or homicides.
What's the China number?
It's over 8,000 a year.
Oh damn!
Yeah. So you put that in perspective, right?
Yeah.
Even like you count the population, you put that in perspective. The U.S. has a lot more compassion than we would think.
Okay.
Yeah. So the liberals are bitching about nothing, is what I hear.
Since you both are with limits approving the death penalty, if you guys were delegates again to the National Convention in 2027, would you vote to repeal this part of the party platform?
Not repeal it, but it would be, modify it.
Would you change it to stop the we need to abolish the death penalty? Would you want to soften that wording?
Yeah, I think that, in my opinion, I would go for a softer approach on it. I mean, we got absolutes are a very dangerous thing, and they're a very good thing, and we need more people that take these solid, stances. But at the same time, on this particular issue, like I said, having biblical precedent, having a purpose for it, if you can restrain it down to a very particular extreme case, yes, I think we ought to soften the word to leave leeway for that.
Carvell?
Yeah, I might agree 100% with Matt. I think it needs to be modified. I wouldn't say that we completely take it away because there needs to be an importance of life, right? But at the same time, even looking at this number, 2023, 24 executions. I mean, if I was like emperor, there would probably be 1,000. I'm sorry. I don't, because there's so much, if we don't have any video, if we don't have any evidence, we don't have anything, you don't try to get a death penalty on someone you just don't know, right? But in this day and age, we see a lot of very evil people just going out of their way to harm others. And that is kind of letting society know that no matter what you do, even if it's premeditated, you don't have the extreme consequences. And and it's not to put fear in people's hearts and minds, but it's just to tell us as a people, we need a standard, right? If we have thousands of executions like China, even though we don't have the same amount of people, I would absolutely hate that because it would make me feel bad because I would know there's innocent people. However, that's the reason why I'm not the emperor, right? I don't have all the right answers, but
Dingus Carvell.
But I would have to agree with Matt, though. It needs to be, I would personally feel that it needs to be modified because it's just not realistic to eliminate all life,
I'm gonna go on the record and say that I would absolutely not oppose. I would not change this whatsoever. I think that it is important to make bold statements, and there is no statement more bold than the support of life in all circumstances, and that is my opinion on it.
One last thing, I said 1,000. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to take that out. It's probably more like 100 or 200, not 1,000. And also, I'm not for a death penalty for pedophilias. I'm not for pedophiles, but I'm not for the death penalty for them.
Moving on to the next topic that is becoming more and more important in society at large is the American Solidarity Party, not only the unnatural death of criminals in our justice system, but also the unnatural death of individuals in the cases of assisted suicide and euthanasia. These, the party believes, violate medical ethics, do no harm, violates human dignity. We are just killing people, essentially, and it violates disability rights. Yeah. I mean, when you are too disabled to live, that is eugenics. That is not a good mindset. And I just pulled up the map. We know that assisted suicide is becoming way, way more prevalent in society. Canada, for instance, not in the US, but Canada's most well known for their MAID program and the abuse of it. In countries like Belgium and Switzerland, there's an industry of euthanasia. They execute, I think it was in Belgium, where there was a 28-year-old woman who was only going through depression, and they let her end her own life. And God help us, we can't help them, right? But more specifically, in the United States, there are several states which do have euthanasia laws. The first and the most well-known is Oregon. They were followed, of course, by Washington, California, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, Maine, Vermont, New Jersey, Delaware, and Washington, D.C. all have laws that make assisted dying legal. And the states of Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, New York, and the rest of New England all have laws pending currently, or have recently passed or failed, depending on when this comes out. But they all have had, all of those states have had laws pending to support assisted dying. And that is a tragedy. It is a tragedy that this has become an issue. It is a tragedy that people feel that this is the only way forward for them. And I think legalizing something like this really shows how bad society has gotten. We cannot support these people.
It's capitalism run amok. I mean, they will commoditize any fucking thing that they can. And this is a horrible thing to, when you make something into a product and then you attach it to something like, I mean, a lot of people have attached this to healthcare. This is a horrible thing. This is very bad. Speaking as somebody who's had dealt with depression themselves, like this is a dangerous thing when you put into the mind of an unhealthy mind, not rational mind, that this is a viable option. That's a very dangerous thing. And my father, he was terminally ill. He died on my 13th birthday. He fought it all the way to the end, and I don't think he regretted a single second of it. My cousin Brittany, she passed away last year. She had tons of medical issues. Brittany was in just horribly excruciating, constant pain, couldn't walk, couldn't take care of herself, but was one of the happiest people I ever met through it all. She would get these migraines and she would cry and she couldn't even keep her eyes open. Still happy through all of it. This is a terrible, terrible thing. And the founding fathers would roll in their graves if they knew that it had gotten to the point where there was even a law considered concerning this. And I am 100% against it. I think it's absolutely terrible. I think this is just asking for trouble with individuals with mental health issues, like you're saying, Chris, with individuals with disabilities. It's eugenics. It's we as a society we don't have the time, the want, the resources to help take care of this person, and they're an inconvenience and we want to get rid of them. It's absolutely asinine, especially if we're going to send billions and billions of dollars to all these other countries because we're so concerned with life. But then you can come over here and it's just like going to damn Walmart. You can go get your suicide. Now, I'm not taking that right away from anybody. If that is, if that's to you is your only option, I'm here to tell you it's not. But, hey, what you do in the privacy of your own house, we can't help. But it as an industry and being commoditized, 100% against it.
I would definitely agree with you guys. I don't know too much about the suffering that people go through because, you can be brought to a certain limit. I am not at all for euthanasia. Don't get me wrong. But I am very careful on what I say because I don't know if I will ever get to the point. And I'm talking not about the mental aspect because I think that's, excuse my language, BS when we're talking about mental health and then euthanasia. That's total BS. But the physical aspect of it, I've never been in pain so much where I thought to myself, you know what, I need out. I mean, I know that, I've had surgery before and I've had lingering pain where it was like, this is unbearable. I could see if this lasted an extended amount of time that, I would want a way out. However, I've never been to that point where I've said, I need somebody to kill me. I need assisted suicide. There's this guy from my hometown, Royal Oak, Dr. Kevorkian. He was very, very
okay. Yeah. He's from where? He's from your town.
My city, yeah, my city.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He sounds evil.
Yeah.
We might be showing our age a bit, Carvell, but I do remember growing up, that was the big thing was Dr. Kevorkian and, just how evil he was, killing all of these people. And, I feel for people in those situations. It's hard to judge Dr. Kevorkian on that sort of thing because he was seeing these patients suffering every single day, and I kind of have sort of a pity almost, I guess, towards Dr. Kevorkian. I think that we need to provide palliative care for end of life situations where when you are in those sorts of painful situations. I don't mind giving someone so much medication that it might cause them to die, because the intention is for them to keep them alive as long, to keep them alive is to keep them in good health. And if the only way to manage the pain is to keep giving them painkillers with risk of death, maybe that should be acceptable in that sort of situation.
But that's not an intentional euthanasia program.
Right.
That's what and I sympathize with what Carvell's saying. You never want to judge anybody's suffering and pain, and that's why, like I said, I'm not advocating for it. But what you do on your own time in your own house, that's your business. I'm just saying we don't want an industry popping up. Something I would like to know is how much money is being invested in these programs, like the MAID program in Canada, and could that money be diverted to some of these programs?
It's savings for the healthcare industry.
Yeah, I think it's
disgusting because
it's awful. I think the way that Canada does it, it's a joke often the time, because they'll say that you can't get some medical treatment, and they say you can't get some medical treatment, but if you want to kill yourself, we can help you.
But that's what I'm saying. There's got somebody's funding it. There's got to be money tied up in it. I get over a long period, length of care. I get that there would be a savings, but what is the cost of the program right now? And that's where I was headed with it, Carvell, is these other programs like stem cell therapy that you're having to go to Mexico to get, that could help some of these conditions that would warrant somebody wanting to off themselves.
The hard part about the euthanasia too is once you have it, you are encouraging people to use it by default. Because let's say you're 85 years old, you probably don't have much time left, and then you get a cancer diagnosis, and they're like, listen, the treatment for this cancer is going to drain your savings. You're going to leave nothing. The hospital's going to take your house. You're going to leave nothing to your kids. Or you can just go into this booth here and you'll be gone, but they'll have all your stuff.
It would 100.
And then you could have their kids going, Dad, you're being selfish. We need this.
It would 100% affect younger people more. I don't think damn boomers would do it. They are selfish. They'll stay alive. It's young people that would make the most use of this.
Well, here's this, guys. So I just randomly thought about this. Do you think if we had universal health care, that euthanasia would actually seep into our society? Because Canada has all the European
countries have it.
Yep.
There's no
that's my guess. Yeah, it's because we don't have good health care and people always want to make money. You can't make money on dead people, right? So you need
but that's more of a freedom over your own life sort of philosophical principle in those countries rather than and somewhat of a cost thing. But regardless, speaking of costs, moving on to the next plank in the platform. This one is kind of an interesting one, and it's the last one in the end of life care. It is the party believes that there should be mortuary costs, funeral costs are a burden, especially on the poor. One of the party planks is that there should be universally public funded program that offsets or covers these mortuary costs. What do you guys think about that one?
I would be for either, honestly. As long as the individual can bury their loved one the way they expect it. Now, if there was like a universal cost for like cremation or something like that, I would be okay with that, even if it came from my tax dollars. If there was one where it was like funding actual funeral expenses and burying your loved ones however you wanted to, I would be kind of like, well, no, let's not do that. Let's not do that, but some people like I was just talking to my cousin the other day, and there was a couple people that died, and his in-laws family or his extended family, I can't remember, but they didn't have the money, and the funeral home had no compassion. And I know a lot of these funeral homes, they lack compassion, especially in, like, let's say cities of Detroit, where they see dead people all the time, over and over and over. And it starts to become a cycle where it's like, well, they're just a number, and stuff. And this is now we're in a business running a numbers game. But the people that are coming in there are real people who may or may not have money, who are hurt because they lost a loved one, whether it be their grandparent, whether it be their child. They're coming in there emotional, but people lack emotion and stuff. And they're also coming in there with no money. Some of them are. These people, I feel in some sense, need help. We can complain about their life and say, oh, you had every opportunity, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, let's be real. Some of us just don't. We're born behind the 8 ball, right? So we don't have an opportunity to get ahead in life. That's just how it is.
Government can't pay for everything. There are certain things that the government does need to pay for. SNAP, that's a program government probably need to be funding. Burial and funeral costs, not something that we want. We don't want the government to have to be funding every little aspect of what goes on in a life. This is a church issue. This is where the church is supposed to step up. If you have a family in the church that has had this tragedy, had this loss, this is where the church needs to work to secure, the mortuary services that can be affordable. Church needs to take up a donation. This is something that churches need to handle.
What about the unchurched?
No, that's a good motivator to go find. No. Seriously, like I mean, churches shouldn't. Again, churches can't, feed the entire planet, but they need to make themselves available and let people know that they do have that option.
See, Matt, to Chris's point, real quick, is that like I've been to the funeral home where a lot of people are not in the church, or they don't want to be in the church, or they don't want to have a funeral at the church. It's because it's just not in their whatever. But like my church, I know no one goes to my church and asks my church to fund anything. However, I know 100% that if any member outside of our church had difficulties, the churches would step up. And that's the same thing with a lot of churches, right? But just not everybody's in the church.
And I get that, but they just need to understand that it's the community resource, and if they want the help, they can go there. And that's not saying you have to go to the church. That's not saying you have to, convert to that religion, but just that's what the church is there for, is for, even if you are not a believer, for you to go and for you to seek help. And, hell, don't go to the church, go to a synagogue, go to a mosque, see how that works out for you.
I think that with all these government programs, with funding transgender awareness in Bolivia and all stuff, there exists pockets of money for something like this. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. It can definitely be a means-tested sort of thing. And I would agree, no choice for it. Just provide a simple casket, lumber from Home Depot, couple nails. You could
no golden casket.
You guys know what someone would argue,
or just government provided cremation services,
right?
Like that would, I think that would be sufficient, as long as it's something that the family would not need to worry about. Like I said, cremation services, or if burial is a necessary thing for their religious beliefs, a simple couple $100 casket, just means tested.
I wish there was a casket. It's really expensive to bury someone. Did you guys know that? I know when we buried my father 5 years ago, the whole funeral, and it was very basic, but the whole funeral cost like $12,000-$13,000. And somebody outside of this podcast would say that's what insurance is for. But man, you lapse on one or two payments, that term life insurance is gone.
You paid it.
It's a crazy business out here.
And like all insurances, they look for ways to get out of paying anything. Mm-hmm. We already do kind of pay for this. Paupers' graves exist. If you find an unidentified body, the government will take care of the remains. So we are kind of already doing this, just in a slightly less dignified manner.
Right.
Like I said, I wouldn't want to throw a lot of money into this, but if we come to a point of the budget where there exists a little surplus, I'm willing to pay a penny so that families can get a decent burial.
There's no surplus, though, is the issue. Even if we save money on the transgender shit, we're still in debt.
This is not something I'd die on a hill for.
No, I get it.
No, I wouldn't either.
Again, the next question is, we're all delegates. Do we vote to remove this from the platform, or do we let it stick around?
I wouldn't, like you're saying, it's not a hill I would die on. I wouldn't be upset if it stays, but I would support it going away. Yeah.
If somebody did bring it to a vote, I might be inclined to vote this off, not because I don't think that it is something that is useful. It's just something that I feel should be up to individual candidates to decide upon, and not something that I think the party should be wholesale committed to.
Well, if I may rant for a brief moment,
all right.
We are a Christian-based party, and I think the church, not all denominations, not one in particular, but just generally speaking, the Christian church, however you want to encompass that, has gotten lazy as hell and is not doing what it's supposed to do in the community. And I feel like, I know it's good intentions, I know why, but for the American Solidarity Party, if you want to take that, what should be the church taking care of people, if you're going to try to strong arm that into government, that's verging on to Christian nationalism, theocracy. We shouldn't have to use the government as an enforcing arm to take care of the responsibilities the church itself should be taking care of.
Now that we have gone through all of the sort of end of life issues, now we get to move on to the beginning of life issues. First thing is the party is very much family oriented. The party is very much geared towards supporting the most vulnerable in society. And part of that is one of the party platforms is funding prenatal care and maternal support for vulnerable women and children, and all the programs that encompasses in. Now, this part of the platform is a bit broad, so I feel a lot of things could sort of fill into this. I love this. I love this part of the platform. I would never want to remove this or change this or do anything like that. I would only want to expand on it if it becomes necessary. Funding prenatal care should be automatic. That sets up a child for success throughout their whole life. That is an investment in the future of the country. And that is an investment that if we are not willing to make, why are we even a country in the first place? Why are we even a society in the first place? And maternal support, so necessary. Even beyond single mothers, who obviously need a lot of support. But
I agree.
Of all stripes, just because you have a partner doesn't mean you're not struggling in some way. Just because you have a partner who can provide all of your financial needs doesn't mean they are able to provide your psychological and emotional needs during that period. And programs need to take emotional, mental, and physical health into consideration, especially while a woman is about to give birth. And I love that.
Yeah, Chris, I would even go a step further and say that we need to look at more of our maternal leaves and how women in the job force, because it's very important that the child gets the nurturing that they need, that is required, I feel. And having women choose between I have to somehow make money come in, because we know that society has changed where men cannot do it all alone now, and stuff. And we need the help of women. But at the same time, if we have children at home, I hate the idea that my wife would lose her job completely because of a baby, a child and stuff. And millions of Americans face this same issue. And I think this is something that we really need to, look at. That's where I would go a step further. I don't know how paternity leave would look like. That would be up to debate. Not something I would care about if it was either way, and stuff, because I need to leave the house sometimes.
You're speaking on paternity leave. Well, when my child was born, I had the opportunity to take 2 months off.
Oh, nice.
Of my work, which was such a great joy for me that I was able to make that connection with my child, and I would not trade anything for that experience. I think every father should have that opportunity, and because it's just so important. And I think that on that effect, I want to say it's Sweden, but I can't recall which exact country. But
I think it's Sweden.
They get 1 year of parental leave that they can split however they choose.
Oh, nice.
So if they decide that the woman ought to take all year of that, they can. If they want to split it 6 months, if the woman has some sort of job where she wants to get really back into it, she could take 2 months off, and then the father can take 10. I would love for that to be a thing. The companies have been taking so much money away from workers since the 1970s. This is something that the government ought to enforce them to do, is pay out. JD Vance went on a big rant about declining birth rates in this country. All right, how about we support new parents? And new parents wouldn't have to worry about their work situation. You're going to see a lot more kids. If you're of the sort that thinks that there's a great replacement, or that, declining birth rates is, the death knell of America, you should support parental leave.
Yep, I agree.
Work for that.
I agree. Like that, there's a lot of complaining about things that the way the situation is, not understanding how the situation can change. And what you just pointed at is having more paternal leave. We're complaining about the birth rate being low. You know, we're complaining, especially and you know, if JD Vance is especially pointing to the white population, you got to give people more opportunity to have these paternal leaves, to be able not to focus and put their heart set on their company, but instead put the heart and set on the family. So you can, you know, focus on the family and focus on the community more. You know, you're going to want to have more children when, you know, you're more community focused, instead of saying that, hey, you know, we got to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week just to make enough, just so we can be a working member of society. It doesn't work like that. You know, it's gotta, you know, it's gotta make sense. And so what you're talking about, Chris, is 100% right. We need to start taking care of parents so that they can take care of their children.
I'll just say that fully in support of it. Don't really care how the hell you fund it, but you know you can. You know, we might have to give up some military bases and some poppy fields and all kinds of crap like that, but it can be done, and you can get employers on board with it. The guy who I started off remodeling under when Jeffrey, my son, was born that week, I believe it might have been on a Monday that he started to come, and my boss handed me my week's pay and was like, you know, go do what you got to do. And I got back as soon as I could, of course, to the job, but, you know, he can afford to do that. Tim Pool, I know his company that Timcast, whatever that company that is, that falls under, they offer unlimited leave, if I remember correctly. So it can be done. It's just nobody wants to do it. And like I said, it'd be a convoluted mess to try to figure out the funding for it, but we can. But I will say, caveat, we can't fund everybody's funeral and everything else. I feel like this is where the money needs to divert to.
Just kind of hitting the last bit of the topic, I'm sure we will go into this in much, much more detail later on, and this is the least controversial aspect of the party platform, which is human beings have an inalienable right to life from conception unto natural death. And to that effect, we need to implement laws that prohibit or restrict abortion, preferably prohibit it in all cases. In the interim time before we can get that done, although with the repeal of Roe v. Wade, this is becoming more and more easier to do. Federal, state governments and taxpayer funding of abortions, a lot of places don't do that exclude abortions from government health care plans. That would be huge. I believe Medicaid likely still has that. Maybe private funded. It flips, right? That's one of those things that flips. When a Democrat's in office, they'll fund abortions, but when a Republican's in office, they don't, right? The party would also like a human life amendment added to the U.S. Constitution. That will be difficult, but equal protection of laws from conception. We also, and to that effect, oppose the commodification of embryos, the intentional destruction of human embryos, which also happens to happen in things like in vitro fertilization. We oppose that because the act of IVF will necessarily abandons embryos to freeze, or it intentionally destroys embryos when they're implanted. So, you guys, this isn't controversial, right? Pro-life means pro-life, right?
Yep, pretty much.
Thank you all for listening. I know we touched on some of these topics a lot more in detail, and some we touched less. The ones we did less of, you will likely hear in future episodes. As always, like, subscribe, comment. We love to hear from you. We love to see you hit those buttons at the bottom of the screen. And with that, thank you for listening. I'm Chris.
I'm Carvell.
And I'm Matt.
God bless, and we hope to see you soon.